This evening we are going to talk tropical cyclones, or what you know as hurricanes. Tropical cyclone is a broad name, but hurricane comes under it. As we go along, you will see what I mean. Okay, here is the outline. What we are going to talk about tonight. The conditions for the development of tropical cyclones and hurricanes, the Atlantic hurricane season, stages of development, the structure of a hurricane, how a hurricane is built, the impacts, why do we track hurricanes, and then we have an exercise where you are going to track a hurricane, the tools that we use, the things we should be aware of, and the different symbols. Okay? Anybody attended this session before? A few? Okay. I'll try to be, you know, meteorology, met and weather has a lot of difficult words and terms. I am going to try to break down everything and to be very basic if I can. If you don't understand something, just write down the question and we'll talk about it at the end. Okay, what is a tropical cyclone? A tropical cyclone is a rotating, organized system of clouds and thunderstorms. So you must have a little thunderstorm. You know, like last week when you heard the thunder going out there, you must have a little thunderstorm for a cyclone to develop out of it. And it originates in the tropics. Now, when we look at the globe, there is an area on the globe that's called the tropics, and that is the only place that you'll find hurricanes and storms forming. And the tropics is identified by this red band across the globe. It falls between 23 degrees north and 23 degrees south latitude, or what you call the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. So this area, it doesn't mean that a hurricane cannot reach anywhere above that, but it begins here and it can move elsewhere. Okay? Now, these different parts of the world call hurricanes differently. So in places like Japan and China, they don't say hurricanes, they say typhoons, but it's the same thing. In the Indian Ocean, West Africa, they would say cyclones, but they mean the same thing. And in our area, we call them hurricanes. So when you hear hurricanes and typhoons, it's the same thing. It's a hurricane, but they call it differently. Now, what they need in order to grow, the ingredients that's needed for a hurricane or a storm to form. First thing, you must have warm sea temperatures. About 26.5, 27 degrees, that's the right temperature for them. And also, the temperature don't only exist at the surface, it has to be at a certain depth. About 150 meters down has to be warm up to the surface. So once they get that, that's the fuel they need to develop. You must have light winds. If the winds are very strong, it tends to disrupt the thunderstorm clouds. So the winds have to be a little light in order to grow. And then the pre-existing disturbance we have here, that's the little thunderstorm I was talking about earlier. A tropical wave, a little rain, something there. Then you have the light winds, and once it has the warm sea surface temperatures, that's all it's needs to make the mixture to bake into a hurricane or a storm. So the three ingredients, remember that? There are others, but these are the main ones. Light winds, sea surface temperatures from 26.5 degrees and above, and the pre-existing disturbance or a thunderstorm area. Now, we know our hurricane season begins June 1st and ends November 30th. This is just the time of year that they form more frequently, but hurricanes and storms can form any time of the year. In history, a hurricane or a storm has formed every single month of the year, January, February, March, all of these. But June 1st to November just means the time that we have more frequent activity happening. And even within that, there's still a small section where you find even more activity happening. That's what we call the peak of the hurricane season, between August and October. Nowadays, in recent times, because of all the variability with climate and climate change, we see some little shifts where August doesn't have too much activity and it's more September. So you will see that kind of shift happening these days. But based on 100 years of data, it's the peak of the season comes just about August to October. And the map I have down here says the time of year that we find and where do you find the activity happening most. So at the beginning of the season, June, you would find the activity happening more in the Gulf of Mexico, not close to us yet. In the Gulf of Mexico or Gulf of America, whatever you call it.
How's it never going to change?
When it moves to August, you see the orange growing a little closer to the islands in our area. You find development most frequently happens. And when later down in the season, it can happen anywhere. Okay? So this is a graph showing 100 years of data and where we find most of it happening. It just points to the peak. Just about the 10th of September is the peak of the hurricane season. And as I said, this has been shifting with various changes in atmosphere and climate. Stages of development. The first thing that happens is a tropical wave, the area of disturbance, where you have thunderstorms, a little gusty winds, and we have winds less than 23 miles an hour, and some rainfall, just a tropical wave, a little something passing. You hear the rumbling of the thunder. Now, if the sea surface temperatures remain above 26.5, as we previously said, or very warm, and everything is right for development, it continues to grow. It intensifies and it becomes a depression. Tropical depression is the second stage. There, the winds have now increased from 23 to about 38 miles an hour. You'll have more rain and more thunderstorms happening. And what happens at that stage, it gets a number, okay? So you'll hear tropical depression 1, tropical depression 5. It has numbers, not names. Once it's a depression, no name is given, it's just numbers. Then conditions remain right, warm sea surface temperatures, light winds. Whilst it moves, it intensifies, it now becomes a tropical storm. The third stage is the tropical storm. Winds now 39 to 73 miles an hour. Rain becomes heavier. And what happens there? No more numbers. It gets a name. Okay? So when it becomes a storm, it gets to 39 miles an hour or up to 73, it gets a name. Have you ever wondered how they get the name? Okay, there are people, representatives of different countries and Met services who meet every year after the hurricane season, about March, April, where they call the Hurricane Committee. And they sit, and once a hurricane has caused a lot of destruction, the name is, they said that it is retired. So they remove the name from the list. Why that is so? It's because we do not want any confusion. For example, we had Irma in 2017. If Irma were to remain on the list, another year comes around, and you have another bad, you say, but which Irma? When you're talking about it to your children, you say, which Irma? The Irma that happened in 2017 or the Irma that happened in 2024? Which Irma? So to remove the confusion, that's why the names are removed, and it is replaced with a name with the same letter, beginning with the same letter. And you would notice the names are one male, one female, one male, one female. And the names are also, some are Spanish, some are French, some are English, because all these people sit at the table, and like today, we are all here, and we want to remove a name from the list. it would just go by a vote. So everybody would say a name, what they think they want to be on the list, and it would go by vote, so the name that wins would be replaced. Okay? All right, so the next conditions remain right. The storm continue to intensify. What happens next? It becomes a hurricane. Once the winds hit 74 miles per hour and higher, it's now a hurricane. Okay? So the stage 1, tropical wave or tropical disturbance. Stage 2, tropical depression. Stage 3, tropical storm. And 4, you have a full-blown hurricane. Now, when it's a hurricane, we have categories. Now, it's called the Saffir-Simpson scale. It's a scale that is used to measure the hurricane by the winds, not by the rain that it produces or anything else, but the winds. And some damage criteria has been attached to it, but the scale is more or less for the winds. So we have category 1. You can see what the winds are. It creates moderate. Just a big tree, the branch would break. If you have light shingles on your house, it would blow away. Category 1, not so strong. Then it moves to category 2. Extensive damage, a little more damage. Once it hits 3, we have major hurricanes. So 1 and 2 is not that major. When you hear them talking about a major hurricane, it's either category 3, 4, or 5. Now, when we get to 5, some people said Irma was a category 6, a category 7, a category 8. There is no 6, 7, or 8. Anything with winds above 156 is category 5. There is no category 6 or 7 or 8. Okay? It stops at 5.
Okay.
It can be 200 miles an hour. It's a 5. All right.
All right.
Now, this is the structure of a hurricane, how it is formed. The center, everybody should know what the center is called, right? The eye. Does that mean it can see you? No. The center is called the eye, and in the eye, everything is calm. If you have already witnessed a landfall of a hurricane, when the eye reaches over you, everything stops, everything goes quiet. You can see the blue sky at that time. But after that, what happens? Yes. So what is happening is that before the hurricane comes over your island, the center reaches, you would have this section. When the eye reaches over you, everything clear. And then what you would witness after the eye would be the other parts. So the eye wall is this, the areas that are very close around the eye. That is where you have the strongest winds and the heaviest rainfall, okay? So the eye wall is very, very rough. And another thing again, the north of the eye is also very strong. It is stronger than the south. So for example, if this hurricane is passing over your island and you are going to feel the northern part, you will feel it stronger than somebody living down here, okay? Then we have the spiral bands. Sometimes a hurricane is 200, 300 miles away from you. It's not even in your area. And one of these little bands just fall over your island and it floods you. These bands have a lot of rainfall and they tend to stick around. They just rest there and they just pour the rain. So these spiral bands are very dangerous as well. I put the map of St. Maarten on there with a hurricane underneath. So the center would be around here. Okay, so I'm saying the center, let's presume the center is right here, and here is between Colombie, I think that is on French side, and St. Peter's. So Colombie and St. Peter's would be calm because the eye is over them. But you living in Dutch Quarter, you would be around the eye, which is the eye wall. So you would be experiencing strong winds, whilst people in St. Peter's would be like, nothing happening, man. Okay? And over here, remember I said north of the eye is stronger than the south of the eye. So these people in Rambo and New Orleans, French Quarter, they would be receiving stronger winds than people down here. The lines that I drew is the direction of the winds. You know when during a hurricane, you hear one side of the house pounding. And when the eye passes, then you hear the winds coming from the other side. Right. So here, if you are in Rambo, you would feel the winds would be coming from that direction. And the same hurricane, you know. If you are living down here, the winds will be coming from the north. And if you are here, the winds will be coming from the west. And if you are here, Oyster Pond, the winds coming from the south. Okay? Because the winds in a hurricane in our hemisphere spin anti-clockwise. It goes like this. Okay? Yeah. So in the southern hemisphere, people in Australia, their hurricanes spin the other way around. It spins clockwise. But in our hemisphere, the winds spin anti-clockwise. So you would understand if somebody is living in Point Blanche and somebody is living in Dutch Quarter, after hurricane, they would tell you they experience different things. Okay? The impacts, we know them very well.
Oh.
If you live near the coast, you have to deal with storm surge. People at Bacon Hill and people at Oyster Bay and even in Phillipsburg. Storm surge can go as high as 20 feet, as tall as a telephone pole or a utility pole. And they can do great damage. They can move into the land and cause a lot of flooding. We also have heavy rainfall. Heavy rainfall is another impact that is associated. Different hurricanes respond differently. Some hurricanes produce a lot of rainfall, others don't produce a lot. You remember Irma? There was not much rainfall at all with Irma. Yes, the wind was stronger. So some hurricanes have a lot of rainfall, some have less. Some have more winds, and so on. And we have the winds to deal with. Winds can be very damaging. With very strong hurricanes, they can have small tornadoes in there that would spill a lot of destructions. After a hurricane, you would see like one little area, all the houses went down there, and this little house there stood there because a tornado within the hurricane itself spun on that side and caused that destruction. Okay? And tornadoes come from the cloud downwards. Okay? So it is called a tornado because it touches land. Some time ago, I remember earlier this year, there was some instability over St. Maarten, and we had a funnel cloud. Now, a funnel cloud is those that are over the water. So the cloud comes down, spinning, and it touches the water. That's a water spout or funnel cloud. So tornadoes are the same thing, but tornadoes touch land. Okay?
Is there ever a called cloudburst?
No, cloudburst is rainfall. Yeah.
So those that move from, has there ever been a case where it come from the water to the land?
Yes, it can happen.
Then you would consider them the same?
Once it hits land, it's now a tornado. Yeah, once it's over the water, it's a water spout.
Does the tornadoes have been in Category 3 and beyond? Or?
It can happen, yes. Once from a major hurricane, you can find small tornadoes in there. It can happen on a plain day too. If you have a cloud, a thunderstorm cloud, we call them CB or cumulonimbus clouds, the clouds that produce thunderstorms, because they have updrafts. What is going on inside of them is you have strong winds going up, strong winds coming down. It's just a cycle going up and down, up and down. So if one of the updrafts or the downdrafts come down off the cloud and it hit the ground, you can find anything like that happening.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's that.
Okay. Why do we track hurricanes? We need to track hurricanes to know where they're going, what they're doing, because they can do damage to our lives. So we need to track them to see where they're going. Meteorologists like myself and my colleagues want to understand the storms, what they do, and we want to know when we issue warnings and watches to you so you can prepare yourselves. We have watches. What is a hurricane watch or a tropical storm watch? Watches come with time, like 36 hours before or 48 hours before. But I tend to leave out the time because the time doesn't always work. Sometimes, depending on where it forms, you do not have 48 hours or 36 hours. So the time is irrelevant. Just what you need to know is if it's a watch, it means that conditions are possible in your area. And if it's a warning, it's more sure. It's expected. When you hear a warning, things are getting pretty dangerous. But if it's a watch, you still have time. Okay? Yeah. Okay, these are some of the tools we use. We use satellite imagery, we use radar. Radar tells us how much rainfall is in the clouds by the different colors. Satellite images tells us where it is, and we can look at it according to the formation. We know what types of clouds are where. These are the pictures you see people send out during hurricanes and storms, and some people see red and blue and all sorts of colors, and they get excited and panic. But the different colors means different things. The red colors means the temperatures of the cells within the clouds. So we also use models. Over here we have models, and we use the information from the Hurricane Hunter to tell us about the hurricane. What the Hurricane Hunter does, they fly into the hurricane. They drop some things we call soundings that relay the information back to the computers to say how strong the winds are, the temperature within it, the wind speeds, and the pressure, which are very important. So they relay that information back to the National Hurricane Center in Miami, and they give us the reading. Then we all know. So they are very important to us. And you hear everybody talking about models and models. Models is a tool that we use. They help us, but they are not exactly what you see is not what you get. You need to understand it to know what to make out of the information it gives you. Okay, things we should do when we are plotting a hurricane, which we are going to do in a while. The center that you hear they give is just the center. It's not the entire hurricane. So you need to understand the location is the location of the center, and weather can change. Adverse weather can reach your area with the eye being very far away. So it doesn't mean in advance of the hurricane, the center reaching you, the weather will change. First of all, the sea is going to start getting rough. Then you'll see the clouds and the rain. So the adverse weather conditions can happen before the eye reaches you. Yeah. And you'll hear tropical storm force winds or hurricane force winds extend a certain amount from the center. Within the eye wall, it will tell you how far out from the center that you have hurricane force winds, how far out from the center that you have storm force winds, okay? So you have to listen to these things. An example here, just an example. Tropical storm Helen, the location that you're going to hear. You see 19.5 north, 84.3 west. This is a location, okay? We will see what that means in a while. Then the other thing you have to listen for is where is it moving to and how fast it is moving. It is moving in this example, movement, it's moving northwest or 310 degrees at 12 knots. So the entire hurricane is moving at 12 miles an hour, not the wind speeds. The wind speeds is called the maximum sustained winds. That is how fast the wind is spinning. But the entire hurricane is always also moving at a particular speed. How strong is it? Is the maximum sustained winds. And the extent of the winds. Tropical storm extends from the center up to 140 miles. So if you are leaving, if the hurricane is like 40 miles away from you, and they tell you the hurricane force winds extend from the center 50 miles from the center, are you going to get hurricane force winds? Yes or no? Okay, the hurricane is 40 miles away from us. And the hurricane force winds extend 50 miles from its center. Yes. Are we within hurricane force winds? Yes, because 40, yes, is before 50. Okay? Things you have to note before we start tracking. We have directions, north, south, east, and west. People, are you aware of that? Yeah. Yes? North is this, south is down here. East is that way, west is that way. And within this, we still have northeast, southeast, and you'll be surprised. Within all of them have another one again, but we won't go there. On the maps that Hurricane Center issues, those you would see on the computers, they have different signs. You would see Hurricane Helene with a hole in the center. You see an X over there. X is like a tropical waves. And the different colors would say, you would see the percent below, the percentage of it being to develop into a storm. We have lines of latitude. I feel like I teach in school right now. I am not sure of your knowledge of this. It might be a little technical. Lines of latitude are lines that move across from east to west on the map, like these. And they have numbers. So the location we were talking about previously has to do with that. So the first half of the location is a latitude from east to west. The second is the line of longitude. They move from north to south on the map, longitude. So that's the second half of the location you would have seen. So over there, Hurricane Helene, it was said that, I'm sorry, I have to move. 19.9 north, that would be the line of latitude. The line's moving from east to west. Just before 20, you would get 19. So from the bottom of the map going up, you would see numbers that would represent the lines of latitude. So I have mapped 19.9, and the lines of longitude, which is the second half, 84.9. These numbers would be in the bottom of the map. After 80, between 80 and 90, we have 84. Where these two lines meet, that's where the hurricane is, or the point that you're looking for. It doesn't have to be a hurricane, it could be a storm. So when you get your maps in a while, I give you the location. The first half of the location is the line that goes from east to west. You will look on the left of your map. On the right of your map, you would see the numbers. Then you would draw a line, and then the line of longitude, which is the second half, wherever they meet, that's the point you mark. You mark a little circle. Can we do that? Okay. Okay, I have a storm for you. Listen to the storm's name. A tropical storm, Tarish. It's the first bulletin out at 5 a.m. on Monday, June. This is fictitious, right? June 10th, 2024. Listen to the date. Sometimes you hear an announcement, and then you go about your business, and the next time you hear might be a day later. So you need to know which one you're listening to. This is Bulletin 1. So if next time you hear Bulletin 4, you know you missed 3 of them, okay? So you don't put the third one before the first one and get yourself mixed up. There is a number to each of them. So we have this being announced. Tropical storm Taris formed east of the northern Leeward Islands. The location is 18.5 north, 44.0 west. It's about 1,083 miles east of St. Martin. The maximum sustained winds, 70 miles an hour, and it is moving towards the southwest at 21 miles an hour. Is it moving fast or slow? It is flying. So what does that mean? If it's moving very fast, will it get to you faster?
Yeah.
So what should you do at that time? Think of it. The minimum central pressure, which tells you how strong it is. So the larger the number, the weaker it is. The smaller the number gets, the stronger it is. So minimum central pressure is 1,003 millibars.
Okay, but
And this below, the comments below, you have to note carefully. Tropical storm tariff is expected to intensify and a reduction in forward speed. What does that mean? It's going to slow down. And when it slows down, what happens? It intensifies, gets stronger.
how we get stuck?
And it is expected, a reduction in forward speed is expected during the next 24 to 48 hours as it moves southwestwards.
Oh,
Persons in the northern Leeward Islands should monitor the progress of this system as watches or warnings may be issued for these islands today. Where do we live? Northern Leeward Islands, right? That's where we are. So you have to open your ears when you hear that.